Fellow Ugandans, I pray and hope that you are well. My name is Kizza, Besigye, and I'd like to talk to you about our situation in our country, Uganda. I'm sure you all know that we are now heading for another area that is not easy, an area when we go through national elections. In the 52 and a half years of our country, Uganda, we have not had any peaceful change of leaders. Every change of leadership has come with a lot of conflict and sometimes with war and devastating consequences. So it's not surprising that as we head towards the next election, there is a lot of uncertainty, apprehension, and even confusion in the minds of many Ugandans. The last 30 of the 52 years that Uganda has been independent has been under the NRM and Mr. Museveni. And we have now had 5 elections as a country. The election of 1980, 1996, 2001, 2006, and 2011. All these elections have been problematic. And in fact, the courts have ruled that elections are not free or fair. Election observers have written reports saying that elections are not free or fair and that they are very problematic. So as we head towards another election, it's important that we understand what has caused this troublesome history that we have gone through. What is the problem? An election means that citizens gather to choose people that they will give power so that those given power can use that power to serve them. So an election is a time of citizens granting power to leaders. But the question we should ask ourselves as we go to an election is whether we actually have power. Because if we don't have power, then there is nothing we are going to give at an election. And I would like to suggest to all of you, dear listeners, that although the constitution of our country clearly says that all power belongs to the people, but you do not have that power, unfortunately. It is on paper, it is not in reality. You do not have power to decide what happens in your country, and that is why whatever goes on, you are just marveling and grinding your teeth, but you have no power to decide what happens or what doesn't happen. You don't have power when taxes are imposed on you. You don't have power to decide what happens to your money that you are taxed, that you pay in taxes. You have no power to influence what goes on around you. And so if you go to an election when you have no power, it means that what you are actually given is just a piece of paper and it remains a piece of paper. And that is why the people who control those elections will determine what happens to those pieces of paper that you collect. So, an election where citizens have no power is a meaningless election. It is just a formality. In fact, I'm sure some of you know that actually even where some people have been announced as winners of an election, like in the case of Kampala, the people of Kampala overwhelmingly voted for a Lord Mayor of their city. But this was done clearly against the wishes of the powers that be. And as a consequence, although the Lord Mayor, Salongo Elias Lukwago, was announced as the winner, the 5 years has passed and he has not held any power because those with power did not want him to hold it. So it's not the people of Kampala with power, it is somebody else who has their power. In the last 15 years or more, Ugandans have tried to cause changes that can lead to free and fair elections. And this is in influencing 2 things. One, to change the structure of government system that manages election, the system and the institutions that manage elections must be changed so that they are independent and that they can manage elections fairly for all contestants. That is the one change that has been fought for. The second change is that whatever is the law and the system is respected by everybody, that there is no impunity, that there is nobody who overrides the law and nothing happens to that person. These are the two main problems that our elections face. On the one side, we have government institutions and systems controlled by one group or one person. Yet that person is part of the contest in elections. If that happens, there cannot be any free and fair election. For example, the Electoral Commission, which manages elections, is entirely serving at the pleasure of the president. The president has power to sack any or all of the commissioners whenever he wishes. And yet, this same president is a candidate. In the present time, as we talk, he's not just a candidate, he's the sole candidate. Yet he has power over the institution that manages elections. Total power. He can sack that body without any reference to anybody. You have all the other government institutions controlled by that same group or person. The military and security organizations that oversee elections, which is why, indeed, members who are opposed to the government can be arrested at any will, charged with all kinds of offenses that do not exist during times of elections. You have the control of the financial institutions and financial systems, where the president can order for any amount of money to be pulled out of the Bank of Uganda, and it is pulled out. And as everybody realized at the last election, more than 2 trillion shillings was spent without the authority of parliament, as is required by law, simply to influence the process of the elections. So the one problem that must be solved is the control of state institutions and systems that manage elections. They must be independent, they must be competent, and that can only happen through appropriate reforms that the people of Uganda have been struggling for. The second problem that the country faces is that of the rule of law. That whatever is within the law is followed by everybody equally. You can have good laws, but which are not respected. In fact, even in the last elections, many of the things that went wrong was not because of the laws not being there, but simply because the laws are not respected by one group, and nothing happens when that group does not respect the law. So, Ugandans have been fighting to make sure that there is changes in these two areas. In the system and institutions that manage elections, that is the system, the government institutions, including the Electoral Commission, that is in having a media that is accessible to everybody equitably, and so that each one's message can be delivered. That is in ensuring that we have credible registers of citizens who are supposed to vote. As we talk now, the register was compiled by General Alonda, who was transferred specifically from the command of the military to come and supervise the register in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. General Alonda compiled that report with other soldiers. It is that register now that has been translated into an electoral register. All these are fundamental challenges that must be confronted. There was an attempt at every time we are heading for an election to change these things, but the government has been very intransigent. And understandably, because they don't want a free and fair system that can lead to their defeat. It is not in the interest of the regime to have free and fair elections, which can lead to their loss of power. So, though Ugandans know what needs to change, though there has been discussions throughout the whole country, in every region, there was a discussion on what needs to be done to have free and fair elections, discussions that were involving all Ugandans, including members of the NRM. There was a national consultation that took place at the end of November last year, and that came out with a very clear, precise, concise agenda of changes that must take place ahead of the next election, which is appropriately called Citizens' Compact on Free and Fair Elections. This Citizens' Compact was handed over to government last year, but we all know that that compact cannot be implemented by this government, which has failed to do anything in that direction over the last 30 years. We know that, therefore, even now, the election has already started. As I talk now, the election has already started without any consideration of reforms. The update of the register started on 7th of April. I am now talking on the 15th of April. So it's already more than a week since the elections began. Yet, till today, there is no proposal of government before Parliament to undertake reforms that will guide the current election. So the election is already going on without any reforms. That register that is being updated, as I have said, is a register that was compiled by General Ronda and his military. It is a register that is supposed to be for national identity, but it is a register where all kinds of people have been registered: Sudanese, Congolese, Rwandese, Kenyans, all kinds of people have been registered now and are going to be voters therefore. There is no update of the Electoral Commission's register, which was there previously and which would be updated with the due consideration that one has to be a citizen and so on. So the current register that is being updated is itself very problematic. It is being updated without reforms being undertaken, and the election therefore has started already on a wrong footing. Therefore, all Ugandans are asking, in the circumstances, what happens? We have decided that certain reforms must take place in order to have a free and fair election. There is no sign at all that those reforms are going to take place. What should Ugandans do? And in my case, wherever I am passing, people asking me, are you coming to become a candidate? Is the opposition selecting a common candidate, a single candidate, as people have been clamoring? What is happening? I would like to suggest to all of you Ugandans that after 52 years of no credible election, after 52 years of troublesome changes that have caused our country a lot of problems, it is a time to draw the line in the sand. It is a time to say we must have free and fair elections now in our country. And what is needed to have those free and fair elections is not in debate. Everybody knows what is needed. So the question is, how do we cause what is needed to be done? I would like to suggest to all of you fellow Ugandans that in order to have free and fair elections, the starting point must be for every citizen to be empowered to demand that which is necessary for our country. We must go through a process of citizen empowerment. It is citizens who must now redirect the country. We can no longer leave it to our agents, because our agents, our representatives or supposed representatives, because at any rate the NRM came to power not through elections but through force. But it could have used that power to serve us. There is clear demonstration that we shall not be served, that we shall not have free and fair elections organized as a result of the NRM regime, as a result of the wish or the cooperation of those holding state power today. So citizens must take the direct responsibility going forward. And what should we do as citizens to take charge? I propose that first and foremost, we need to do three things. The first thing is that we really must change our mentality and do so as quickly as possible. We must appreciate that we have no power presently, and that if we have no power, we have nothing to control in our country. We will not control the decisions that are made. We will not control our wealth in this country. So we need power. We must change our mentality and know that we have no power, that we need power in order to influence whatever goes on in our country, including elections, or more importantly, elections. And that we can have that power. We should know that we are not powerless. We can have that power and cause the changes that we need. The second thing that we need to do, once we have changed our minds, once we have changed our mindset, we need to organize. Individual citizens that operate without coordination are powerless and will be managed and treated in that way that are like people without any power. So we have to establish some coordination amongst the citizens. That coordination is already being undertaken by a number of citizens to link up with others, to establish contacts that can be used to communicate amongst ourselves. And that process of coordination is going to go on. Wherever you are, you should know that you need to be linked up with other people in your community for common actions that will demand power for yourselves. And this is a very, very important exercise. If you don't know how to link up with your fellow citizens, I'll give you a telephone number that you can call and be linked up wherever you are, so that we have coordination. We can speak with one voice. Thirdly, once we've changed our mindset, once we have coordination, we need to take action to ensure that the changes we want are actually implemented. Parliament is supposed to make laws. If it does not make laws, since it is our representative, we can take over what Parliament is supposed to do, acting together. So we can take certain actions to make sure that the next election is free and fair. And we have to take those actions. If we sit and do nothing, then we are inviting disaster for our country. I invite you to make sure that you prepare ourselves for the necessary actions that will empower citizens to change systems in their country to have free and fair elections. And so, my very clear clarion call, the clarion call for the way forward is that we should not allow at all an election that is not free or fair to be held in our country. The next election must either be free, fair, and credible, and that will only happen if the necessary reforms that Ugandans have agreed upon have been implemented, or if that is not done, then we should make sure there is no election. There can only be a free and fair election or no election. 30 years, the NRM regime has blocked the process of having a free and fair election. If they remain the obstacles to having a free and fair election, then we should simply struggle with them to make sure that they leave when this term ends on May 12th, 2016. They should leave so that a free and fair election can be organized without that obstacle. And Ugandans, once they have formed this coordination, can definitely create a process that will manage a transition from May 12th, 2016 to a free and fair election. So we should not be bulldozed into saying there must be an election next year, even if that election is not free and fair. The clarion call: free and fair elections or no elections until the NRM regime gets out of power, and free and fair elections are organized thereafter. How we achieve that, I must repeat. How do we achieve that? We achieve that by changing our mindset to know that this is our country. We are the only controllers. We are the people with the ultimate power in this country. No one has more power than we do. We must know that we have no power now that we are exercising, and that we will acquire it by organizing ourselves, having coordination amongst ourselves, and taking action. The kinds of actions that we will need to take, I have said, can include becoming a parliament by ourselves, occupying parliament. But it's not limited to that. There are many other actions that we can take to ensure that we have the power, and these actions we can coordinate and communicate once the coordination that I have talked about is there. So, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by saying that this is a time when we must make a watershed decision for our country. The watershed decision is we have lived for half a century under a period of no free and fair elections. The line must be drawn in the sand now. Going forwards, it is either free, fair, and credible elections or no elections. And I would like to invite all colleagues who are in the opposition, in the political opposition, that this is the time to unite, to rally together, to demand together that it is either free and fair elections or no elections. We cannot afford to once again be escorts, be legitimizers of an illegal, in fact, criminal regime. If you have not been coordinated with your neighbors and colleagues yet, I would invite you to call, to send a message. Don't call, send a message, send a written message to my telephone number, which is 0752 373 647. I repeat, 0752 373 647. Send a text message, don't call, and we shall link you up with other Ugandans in your area so that we prepare to change our country. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you.